Another nail in my coffin!
Hey everybody, it's me, your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and this is my series, Nails in a Coffin, where we learned that with great kills, there must also come great nails. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. I'm covering Spiral, the Book of Saw today, which is the 9th movie in the Saw franchise. Now, if I planned this correctly, this episode of Nails in a Coffin should go out on October 27th. Halloween is only a few days away, so happy Halloween, everybody. When I first started covering this franchise, Jigsaw sent me a message, and he said I had to cover all the movies in the Saw franchise by Halloween, or else I'll be the one getting nailed. Well, he's not too smart because it was really easy doing it once a week, so this is the last film I have to cover, and Halloween is still a few days away, so I think I'm in the clear. Sorry, Jigsaw, I'm really not too much impressed with you right now. Here's a summary of the average nails in a coffin for the first 8 movies in the Saw franchise. The original Saw, first one I covered at 1.4 nails. Looks like Saw 2 has the lowest average right now at 1.25. Saw 3 still leading the charge with the average of 2.57 nails. And then, 5, 6, and 7 all around the same, pretty close to each other. And I just covered Jigsaw last week with an average of 1.67 nails in a coffin.
Keep laughing. If you're watching, you may want to wait to the end of the video.
Let's get to the nail. And we get our first set of nails just about 5 minutes into the movie. Detective Marv Boswick, he chases a purse snatcher into some abandoned tunnels. He then approaches a figure sitting on a chair. He knocks it over, saying it's only a mannequin. Then he's attacked and knocked out by a pig-maxed figure. He wakes up, finds himself in a subway tunnel standing on a stepladder position on the rails. His hands are behind his back, and his tongue is in a vice-like contraption suspended from the ceiling. Videotape informs him he has 2 minutes to jump off the ladder and rip out his tongue. He's a crooked cop who's lied on the witness stand, so this movie's Jigsaw wants him to rip out his lying tongue. He's able to get his hands free, and he tries to get his tongue out of the trap, but he can't. He's desperately trying to free himself. Eventually, he does step off the ladder, ripping his tongue out, but he does this right as the train hits him and obliterates him. Detective Boswick earned himself 2 nails in a coffin. Now, he did get his hands free from behind his back, and they were tied with razor wire, it looked like. He also tried to pull his tongue out of the vice first without stepping off the ladder and ripping out his tongue out of his mouth. That would be horrible. But he did waste a little bit of time. But what do you guys think here? I do think he waited too long to step off the ladder. Not that it would have been easy to rip your tongue out, but none of these Jigsaw traps are easy. But he ripped it out the last second right as the train hit him. I mean, if you're not going to be able to rip out your tongue, just let the train hit you instead of ripping your tongue out and then feeling that pain for a second and being obliterated by a train. That much didn't make 2 cents, but I was going to give him 1.5 nails in a coffin, but he did get his hands free and try to pull his tongue out of the vise without stepping off the ladder. So here are some extra points. So he just squeaked out earning 2 nails in a coffin. Our main protagonist for this movie is Detective Zeke Banks, played by Chris Rock in a series role. Zeke is currently investigating these Jigsaw-style trap kills. He recalls when he had to turn in a dirty cop, Peter Dunleavy, who was his partner. Peter had killed a man who was going to testify against him. This individual was Charlie Emerson. He opened a door when Peter was at it. Peter just shot him dead and then said that Charlie pulled a gun on him. Not much to talk about on this one. Charlie gets a pass. He opened the front door and he was shot by a piece of shit cop. Dude did nothing wrong. I actually admire that he was going to testify against a dirty cop. That's admirable. But yeah, there wasn't much he can do based off what I saw here, so Charlie gets a pass. Our next 2 deaths happen when we see Detective Finch, who's caught in a trap. He was abducted by a killer, and he wakes up inside a tub filling with water. He has a cage around his head, and all his fingers are now attached to wires. Years earlier, he had cold-blooded murdered a man who insulted him during a traffic stop. So, in about 90 seconds, the water in the tub will reach a copper wire, and Finch will be electrocuted. He must bite down on a mechanism in his mouth. This will activate a motor that's going to pull his fingers off. He really doesn't waste time. He bites down and the machine starts to pull off his fingers. One finger comes off. The pain is too much, so he stops biting down. And the machine stops pulling, but he bites down again and starts to pull off all of his fingers. He almost gets all of his fingers off, but time does run out and he is electrocuted. First up, the motorist that Fitch killed, Jimmy Lincoln, I believe his name was. That's what the internet tells me. He gets a pass. All he did was insult an asshole cop for pulling him over, and he was innocently shot for no reason. Nothing he can do. An easy pass for Jimmy. Now, Detective Fitch, he earned himself 3 nails in the coffin. Now, don't get me wrong, he was a horrible person and kind of deserved to be in this trap. However, he didn't waste much time biting down and starting that machine. He only stopped for a moment after one finger was ripped off, and I could see you want to stop the scream. Then he did start up again. I think if he had about 30 seconds more, he would have survived. Now, I've watched a lot of people die in the saw traps from all these films, and even though I don't like this guy, he really did better than most victims, so I do feel that 3 nails in a coffin is warranted. Captain Angie Garza is next. She's investigating these killings with Zeke. He just figured out that she is possibly the next target, so he's trying to make it to her to try and save her. She walks into the police station's cold case room and she sees a figure standing there in a pig mask. She draws her weapon and backs up right away. The door shuts and it does lock her in. She tries to shoot her way out, but the door is metal. The killer tosses some smoke canisters at her. She kicks them away from her. However, the gas is too much and she does eventually pass out. We see her strapped to a table next with a piece of cloth over her head. She can't move, but she does find a tape recorder by her hand and she plays the message. The voice on the tape says that she has to sever her spinal cord with the blade placed beneath her neck to stop the flow of hot boiling wax from a faucet that's going to pour over her face. She's trying her best to sever her spinal cord with that blade under her neck, and the wax is pouring heavily on her head. It's boiling and steaming. She's not giving up, and what must be unbearable pain. But she could not complete her task in time. Eventually, she suffocates as the wax covers her entire face. I'm going to award Captain Garza 3.5 nails in a coffin. As soon as she saw the man with the pig mask in front of her, she actually went into action. I love how she tried to shoot the lock on the door right away, even though it was made of metal. And it was smart of her to kick those gas canisters away from her. Now, she didn't have a mask, so despite her covering her mouth with her shirt and firing into the smoke, she still passed out. Once she was in the trap and given the instructions, she didn't give up. And this was a near impossible trap to survive. But she didn't quit. If the wax didn't start pouring right away, she may have lived if it wasn't pouring so heavily. But I think she was definitely destined to fail no matter what. But from all the films I've watched, she was definitely one of the smartest victims who actually tried the hardest to survive that I've seen in this entire franchise. So I'm comfortable giving her 3.5 nails in a coffin. After Angie's body is found, Zeke reviews the surveillance footage of the corridor that was outside the cold case room. That footage has been deleted, and the server's login data points towards Peter Dunleavy, Zeke's ex-partner. He gets to the church where Peter would be, and then he calls his dad, Marcus Banks, former police chief, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Zeke can't get a hold of him, and he's eventually subdued by the killer right outside the church. And then the scene then jumps to where his father, Marcus, is, and we also see him subdued by the killer. Zeke wakes up in a storage building, and he sees someone standing on a box with their hand secured over their head. He then sees his arm is handcuffed to a pipe. There's a hacksaw next to him, and he pulls it over using his leg. Once he gets it in hand, he tries to cut through the chain, but we know that's not going to work. He does consider cutting off his shackled hand with the hacksaw, but he then sees a bobby pin on the floor. He pulls it over to himself, and he was able to use that to unlock himself from the pipe. Moments later, he notices that his ex-partner, Peter, is standing on the box. Zeke thinks Peter is actually responsible for these deaths, but he then finds another tape left by the killer who confronts him about Dunleavy's corruption and offers him a choice to save or let him die. A machine with a conveyor belt starts up. Glass bottles are dropped into a mechanism that crushes the glass and then shoots it across the room into Peter. Zeke does take cover from the glass, and Peter is just getting mutilated from these glass shards while Zeke is trying to figure out where the key is to Peter's restraints. He was thinking about the clues from the tape, and he actually finds the key in a trash can. He tries in vain to save Dunleavy, but it's too late. He unlocks his shackles right as Dunleavy dies from his wounds. I was close to giving Dunleavy a pass since his life was in the hands of Zeke, but I think I'm going to give him 2 nails in a coffin instead. There was nothing he could really do, but I did see him do something smart. At least he turned around as soon as the glass started to shoot at him, so it hit his back and, not his face and chest. And I actually gave Zeke more time to find a way to unlock him. I'm sure there are other victims that just would have stood there without trying to turn their body around as glass was shooting at them. We've seen a lot of stupid in this franchise. That was all he could really do, and take into consideration why he was in this trap, what he was able to do once in the trap, I feel comfortable awarding him 2 nails in a coffin. Not too many kills in this installment of the Saw franchise. We're at our final death in the movie, and it's Marcus Banks. While looking for a way out, Zeke comes across William Scheck, who merely faked his own death earlier in the movie. He revealed himself as the killer in this movie. He tells Zeke that the innocent man, Charlie Emerson, that was shot by Peter Dunleavy, that was his father, and William adapted John Kramer's MO to exact revenge on a corrupt police system. William forces Zeke to participate in a final game that leads them to his father. He's suspended above the floor with numerous tubes draining blood from his body. William hands Zeke a gun with a single bullet in him and tells him he can either save his father and allow William to flee, or he can kill William and sacrifice his father in the process. Meanwhile, William he had called the police and informs them about a shootout to lure them to the hideout. Zeke decides to save his father, and he shoots a spiral-shaped target, causing Marcus to be lowered to the floor. Zeke is checking on his dad, and then he goes after William as a SWAT team arrives. Zeke attacks William in the elevator as SWAT is trying to breach the door. Marcus is trying to tell SWAT not to come in, but obviously they can't hear him. He's too weak from the blood loss. When they open it, this reactivates the trap, and Marcus is pulled back up via wires, turning him into a puppet. Spotlights turn on, facing SWAT, hindering their vision, as a shotgun pops up next to Marcus's arm, and it points it at the police thanks to the wires. Mistaking him for an armed assailant, the SWAT officers shoot Marcus and kill him right in front of Zeke as William is escaping in an elevator. Our final set of nails go to Marcus, and he earned himself 2 nails in a coffin. There really wasn't much he could do here. He was in a helpless position, but this one really didn't feel like a pass to me, because I do think he was abducted by William just a little too easy, which is why I don't think he deserves a pass, but wasn't much he can do, so he does earn himself a respectable 2 nails in a coffin. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all my nails in a coffin for Spiral, the Book of Saw. Here's a summary of all the nails I've awarded. And here is how all the Saw movies compare with their average nails in a coffin. And you can see here, it looks like Saw 2 is going to win with the lowest average nails in a coffin with 1.25. And Saw 3 just barely beating Spiral, the Book of Saw, which we just wrapped up, with Saw 3's average of 2.57 nails in a coffin. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you here next week when I have my Golden Nail Awards for the Saw franchise. I'll be going over the films with the highest and lowest average nails in a coffin and give my theories as to why they had those respective awards, as well as my favorite 1, 2, and 3 nail kills in the entire franchise. I didn't give out any 4 nail kills, so you'll get the golden nails for all those kills. I may even talk about my favorite and least favorite trap. I'm also going to rank these movies, which I did within the last 2 years for Movie Timeline's Dead Last, but I do feel like they've changed, so I'm not going to look at those rankings before I re-rank them for next week's Golden Nail Awards.
There's a good chance Uncle Pete won't be with us next week. He failed his test and lost the game. He hasn't covered Saw X. So, sorry Uncle Pete, unless you cover it by the 31st, it's going to be game over.
See you all here next week. Thanks a lot for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'm trying to hit 500 subs by the end of the year, and I really appreciate it if you help me get there, because you are awesome. Take care of yourself, stay safe, and be good to each other. I am your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and remember, with great kills, there must also come great nails.